Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahe, tejasvinavadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let's give us context what we have done so far. We've talked about the situational and fundamental condition that Arjuna was discerning, yet he didn't know that he was discerning it. And what Arjuna asked basically was, what will give me final fulfillment? He expressed that in an implicit way. He wasn't directly stating it. So obviously he went beyond this black or white thinking. So what is this black or white thinking? The common thinking is, if X happens in my life, then that is good. Whereas if Y happens, that is not good. Whereas Arjuna's thinking went beyond that. He said, whether X or Y happens, it is not good either way. So this is the same way how most 99% of the world goes about thinking about anything. That is, if the lockdown ends, my life is good. If I'm in a lockdown, my life is not good. If something to my favor happens, if I get one more hug in one day from my partner, then my life is worth living. If I don't have that one hug, then it's not going to be a pleasant day. In other words, we set up these conditions and we live within these confines of these conditions. A common example that my friend actually brought this up, and just want to bring it up with you, is the older parents get, there's this need to now take care of parents. And what often happens is inside we feel like we don't want to actually take care of them because we got a busy life, but then we feel obligated to. So what happens is inside we're boiling, right? It's like, I don't want to do this, but there's this obligation, well, I need to take care of my mom or dad. So then we end up being with the mom and feeling inside resentful. So this resentfulness actually comes across and it produces an unpleasant experience for her or him. Or the other extreme is we say, well, I'm not going to help at all. I just don't want to get involved because that's not my business. I've got a busy life. So we can see how this black or white is just ingrained. It's either like this or it's either like that, full stop. Whereas the better way, what Arjuna is expressing is he's saying is, well, let's think of it a little bit deeper. Let's little bit more options that we can possibly say. For example, what do I want? Do I really want to take care of my mom or dad? So you look at your own feelings about it, honestly, and you can look at this, you envision yourself staying there for 1 month and you just assess, would I be okay with that? If you make a decision, then you're probably going to, have a good time and she's going to have a good time. But if you assess that and you say, not completely, so then you say, okay, well then what can we do so that both I and her or the parent are happy? So you can say, well, I can contribute financially, or I can contribute maybe one day, and then my brother or sister can contribute some other time. Or we can maybe do some caretaker and we'll both contribute financially. So this means we're thinking beyond this kind of yes or no. And because this yes or no produces this tension between myself and the other. So in other words, what the Mahabharata is showing us is simply that a noble decision is one whereby you make a decision where it is appeasing for both you and the other. Whereas an ignoble decision is one that either appeases me or appeases the other. In other words, inside I'm boiling, but outside I'm being nice. So this is a total discord of how we go about things. So we have to be honest before saying yes or no. And that honesty requires time on our part to assess, are we competent? Are we capable of saying yes or no? And are we willing to do the job happily? So Arjuna saw clearly that no matter what happens right now in front of me in this Kurukshetra, it is not going to lead to a successful outcome because there are going to be repercussions. So Arjuna's question was, what is going to give me final fulfillment? So he saw past winning or losing. He saw past the pleasures of life. Whereas most of us are just caught up in the pleasures. Like, if I get this pleasure, then my life is good. So then what did Krishna say? Krishna said to Arjuna, in order to have this final fulfillment, there must be a paradigm shift. And this paradigm shift has 4 areas that need to be reassessed. The first area is my psychology holding me back? This means, are there psychological pressures from my childhood, like abandonment issues, or feeling guilty for no reason, or low self-confidence? Are they holding me back from fully immersing myself in this knowledge? If they are, I need to be honest about it, and I need to take some time and trace the cause and reframe the situation so it doesn't hold me or doesn't have as much power. The second is, I need to reassess my identity, who I am and what I am. This means first psychological, once psychological, then I need to attend to my nature of I. Then, what is the nature of the universe? Because even if I figure out who I am, you still look around you and you say, okay, great, how did all of this come? If we don't address that, these doubts continue. Therefore, the search will continue, it will persist. Once we figure out the nature of the universe and my relationship to the universe, then we have to ask, this is the fourth, within this universe, what is my role? What is my, what's called swadharma? What is my duty? Where do I shine? And when I shine, how can that shining contribute to the environment? So these 4 are in an order which need to be reassessed to have a total life transformation in order to have the final fulfillment, which Arjuna and all of us are asking for. So the first assessment that Krishna assessed or brought up once Arjuna asked the question was number 2, the nature of I. So he said, who are you? He started out with a big statement. And we talked about last week, generally, we started by negating who we are not. So let's start just a little summary of why I'm not this body and why I'm not this mind. We said that we all come with a special relationship with this body that is, without a question, true for all of us. And if we don't take the time, Luciana, is there an issue? Okay. If we don't take the time to investigate this relationship, then we will mistake the I am with the body, mind, and sense. It's just going to happen naturally. Now, the Upanishads say to destroy the smallness, which is caused by the association with the small, limited body, mind, to destroy that, what do we need to do? We need to redefine the relationship with the body, mind. We don't need to negate the body, mind, simply redefine the relationship in order to destroy that sense of smallness. Now, the question is, why do we mistake I am the body, mind? Why does this happen? It happens because there is a connection with it. Everyone is born given this body from day one. It's the most obvious, most present thing that you have with you. So in other words, if we didn't have that connection, we wouldn't feel small. But because we do have that connection with the body, we thus feel small. Therefore, we need to address that smallness. In other words, the mind is not given to be eliminated. It's not given to be subsided. It's not given to be put aside, because the mind is actually the only friend that you have in order to redefine your relationship, thus to get rid of this sense of smallness, which percolates in different ways. And what does this do? It creates this sense of limitation. Now, what does limitation mean, if you ask, in respect to the body? Limitation in respect to the body means I'm aging and I can't stop it. Can anyone here press a stop button on their aging process? Anyone successful? No. However, we try to do the best that we can. So even though this body is with us all the time, every second, even though we still cannot press any or kind of, stop the aging. If we could, I don't doubt anyone would gladly put the stop button. Sure, maybe you can still say I want to die at 80 or 90, but at least stop aging me stop as a body at 25, so I can have shiny skin and glowing face and so on. So we cannot stop that. So that's a limitation in respect to the body. Limitation in respect to the mind. No mind here can know everything. No mind can know all knowledge. We all only have partial knowledge in respect to a particular field that we specialize in. In other words, we only shine in one capacity. And even if you do shine in one capacity, someone is likely going to outshine you. In other words, no matter how much we try, we're only so limited in both the body and the mind. So no matter how much we develop, it is only a fraction of Ishvara's infinite knowledge. And therefore, that capacity is also taken away at the time of death. So this means that no matter how much you practice and how good you become and how many accolades you get, all of that in one snap, just taken away. So this is what it means to be limited in respect to the body and the mind. Now, let's talk about the body. Why I am other than the body. So the inquiry is, am I related to this body or am I the body? So we'll start with that inquiry. So we know that the body is only an instrument. And your job is to take care of that instrument, no doubt. We're not against not taking care, which it needs to be taken care of, because you're using your instrument now to listen and sit comfortably. If you couldn't sit comfortably, you'd probably go elsewhere and try to exercise. So this means there is a component of staying healthy and sharp in order to receive this knowledge. Now the problem starts when the I habitually takes myself as the various body conditions. For example, I am getting older. I am in pain. So what does this do? It creates unnecessary extra discomfort onto myself. If you ever remember, as a kid, you had a little cut on your hand, and then you freak out because it's such a big deal. In other words, it's so associated. I so believe I am the body that I cut myself. But then later on, you cut yourself, and then it's not a big deal. It's fine. So this lets us know that the association to the body can also have this extra sense of discomfort, which is just unnecessary. So we need to understand the relationship with it properly. For example, we said last week, are you the cell? Are you any one of the cells in the body? No, why not? Because if you were, then you would come and go. Because cells come and go all the time. Every few minutes, millions and millions and millions of cells coming and going. We also said, which cell, show me which cell is I am. Let me see it, bright, shiny cell. So no cell you can find that is I. So now how many non-I cells do you have to add up in order to magically come to I am? It's just, there's no logic there. And we also said that if you were the body, then you would not know yesterday's body condition, because how many times has the body already changed since yesterday? But you do have a connection to yesterday. This means you are free of whatever has happened to the body. That's why you know about the changes of the body. Now the objection is, so what if I'm not the body? Okay, big deal. How does this now make any difference in my life? Because I've heard this before. Well, it does make a difference. If you think about it, because I am the body means I'm mortal, and I am mortal means I become small, and I am small means it affects my self-image. And when my self-image is affected, it causes psychological pressures. Now, what did we say at the beginning when we started out? We said, in order to have final fulfillment, we need a paradigm shift. Starting out with what? Is my psychology holding me back? If I don't address that, then by the time I come to number 2, what is the nature of I? It is simply not going to stick because my psychology is still going to be pulling me back to number 1. So you can see how that psychology is traced to all the way to over-association to the body. Another is eating disorders, right? Today we have various disorders like I need to look good by eating so many calories, by exercising different parts of the body. In other words, most of the health industry today, 99%, is on the basis of this false assumption, I am the body. So if I want to improve you, what do? I give you supplements, I give you new powders, I give you, present you research with these, extra vitamins and algae and good bacteria, and you go, wow, I want all of this for me because it's going to improve myself. So in other words, it creates so many unnecessary lifestyle consuming activities just to attend to myself as the body. Then we said, I am not the mind. Okay, so the question now is, what is my relationship with the mind? What is your relationship with your mind? This is an important question because this is going to lead us into inquiring who and what I am. To answer that, we must first ask, what does the mind constitute? First, memory. Memory consists of what's called the unconscious. Unconscious is further divided into 2 components. The first component is that memory which is acquired in this lifetime. That means childhood impressions. From the moment we are born, we are given impressions by parents and by different exposures of the TV channels and the society and other friends around us. So these people and the parents and so on, all contribute to unconscious number 1. And what does this do? It makes us respond in the way that we do. In other words, when a situation comes, like right now, how you respond to that is going to be directly dictated, or how you interpret that will be determined by unconscious number 1. In other words, there will be a thought pattern about what is happening. That thought pattern is a result of my unconscious, and that is going to produce a response. And when it does, I'm going to make a conclusion about what is happening. This is happening. Now, when I say this is happening, that is going to be true for me. And I'm going to be absolutely convinced that is the case. Therefore, there will be no question of questioning it. This is what we call projection. That means when I project, for example, say the partner is maybe 10 minutes later, and then we say, okay, so they're obviously doing some naughty business over there. So we project this idea, what someone is doing, without having any proof, and we're totally convinced by it. So when the partner comes back home, we're angry, we're upset because we're living in this projected idea, which is a result of my unconscious, which I have not taken the time to investigate. And we don't even know why it causes the conflict in the relationship, whereas it's actually traced to the childhood impressions. And then what's the result of this? This creates a narrative. So when the person says there's a story going on in my mind, that is called a narrative. This narrative is what we then take to a psychologist to help us to change the story, because it's an annoying story. It holds us back. When a psychologist does apply some reframing techniques, then there is a time lag. This is why when you walk out of the office, it's not like there's an instant change. It takes sometimes a year and a half to actually see these changes in full effect. Number 2, so memory component, unconscious number 2. These are called the samskaras, past life impressions. In other words, number 2 impressions have nothing to do with this life. that have nothing to do with the parental genetics, nor what has happened from the day I was born. That is why you can be born as a twin, or you have a twin, and both twins share a unique ability, and it has no trace to anything that the parents have done, nor to what the environment is exposing them to. This is being carried over from what's called samskaras. Where are these samskaras stored? They're stored in what's called the causal body, or the Anandamaya Kosha. What is the causal body? It is that body which causes unique body-mind attributes. In other words, you who you are as a person, as a body-mind person, all of the individual characteristics is caused by what? Samskaras. Where is the samskaras? In the causal body. Now, there is another name in the West which is often brought up, and that is called the subconscious. So what's the difference between the unconscious and the subconscious? The unconscious governs how you interpret situations. How you're listening to me right now is done by the unconscious. Suppose I start like speaking in a certain manner, and then it reminds you of someone else who spoke like that as a child, then you're going to start feeling maybe annoyed, and you're not going to know why. And you're going to then project it onto me. But it's actually traced to someone else who annoyed you maybe 20 years ago. So this is what we call projection, and we don't even know why it's happening. So this means we need to capture all of the emotions that are expressing and question them, because they will dominate various parts of our life. Whereas the subconscious is that part which puts you on autopilot. When you drive a car, the subconscious is making that car being driven. That means you can speak to people in the car, you can listen to music, even be on the phone, even though you shouldn't. And yet there is a component that's making you drive the car without you having to interface or engage with that process. That's called the subconscious. The next component, component number 2, is the cognitive capacity. Cognitive capacity is that which distinguishes us from all the other beings. In other words, we have a sophisticated CPU, which is able to process high sophisticated information, like putting the man on the moon by calculating different trajectories and the timing of the relative position of the craft and the moon and the earth, and putting it, so many details go into the planning of just launching a rocket, or especially putting a man on the moon. This is done by an advanced CPU called our cognitive ability. And this is what makes us different from animals. They all have cognitive ability also, but it is highly limited in respect to dealing with the environment to which they find themselves within. They don't need to go any more other than feed and reproduce and navigate basic and run away from territorial threats. Component number 3, emotional capacity. What is this? It is the capacity which is able to make you say that this emotion is traced, or that this emotion is traced to that event. When you go to a wedding, how do you feel? I hope you don't feel jealous. How do you feel when you go to a wedding? Okay, however it is, right? Now you say what? Okay, because of the wedding, I feel happy, I feel glamorous. Because of the loud neighbor, I feel annoyed. In other words, we can link the emotion onto the specific event. Therefore, emotional capacity is not only reserved for feeling emotions, but also tracing the cause of what instigated this emotion which is arising right now. The 4th capacity of the mind is called the ahamkara, the I sense. What is the ahamkara? It is the function of the mind, these are all functions of the mind, which is able to relate everything that's ever happened in connection to your body and your mind to the sense of I. In other words, if you cut yourself, you experience that pain. You say, I am experiencing this pain. You don't mistake that someone else is experiencing this pain. In the same way, when someone else cuts themselves, you say, I'm so lucky it is not me. In other words, it is that component which individuates all of the experiences which are occurring to just one body-mind onto myself as the body-mind. If you look up on YouTube, there's a nice video by Jill Tyler. She created my stroke of insight. It's a TED Talk. And she was having a heart attack, I believe, and one of her, either left or her right brain was being shut down. And she was explaining how suddenly, I think she was in the shower and she couldn't discern the difference or the edges between the glass and the air. So it sort of like started to all merge into one, big soup. In other words, the mind was not able to host one of the four functions, in this case, the ahamkara. Therefore, she had no barriers as to who is experiencing this. Is it this body that's experiencing this? And where is the ending? Where's the edges of this body? So the ahamkara, therefore, is the component which individuates the experiences. It also dictates how you feel by yourself as a person. So when we say, I have a self-image about myself, what are you talking about? Self-image is all of the experiences that are linked to just one body-mind. That means the I sense. Now, what is the function of the I sense? The I sense gives a sense of continuity of events. Right now, you've started listening to this a couple of minutes ago, and so many changes have taken place to the mind, to the memory, to the emotions, to the cognition, and yet you can still have a sense that there was a time period that went on that I'm now still here. In other words, even though life is fluctuating every millisecond, right now has no connection to right now. How many cells were changed? How many sounds went on? How the blood that was at the bottom of your feet is now at the top of the head, and vice versa. Memories are different, emotions are different. So many things took place, and yet you still have a sense of continuity that I was there 1 minute ago and I'm still here right now. In other words, it gives you stability of your life story. You say, I have a life story. And I know what my life story is. I know what it consists of. And I can tell you my life story. Things took place last week. Things took place 1 year ago. Things took place 5 years ago. And all of those events that took place are connected to whom? To me right now. In other words, the ahamkara is that thread which links all of the experiences which happen to one body-mind, onto me right now as a person. It also connects the I to the body conditions. This is why we say, if you've probably heard, when the hearing goes away, we often say, we don't say my hearing is being lost. What do we say? I am going deaf. In other words, the I sense connects all of the body conditions as though it is me. That's why I say I am going deaf. It's because in truth, like just hearing instrument is degrading in its quality. But because of this error, we say I am going deaf. Okay. So far, let's do a quick summary of what we have spoken in respect to the body and the mind. The changing or the limited body-mind becomes I. Thus, I become limited. That statement is the entire subject matter of the Upanishads that they try to correct. Therefore, through the knowledge of the Upanishads, the mind, which I just explained, which consists of 4 functions, gets to understand what is its own nature. Not only what the mind, the very mind that's inquiring, what that mind is made of, but also what is it that illumines the 4 functions of that mind which is inquiring. That is the topic matter of the Upanishads. Changing limited body, mind, senses become I, therefore I become limited. And then we live life according to that mistake. And then the Upanishads come and it makes a correction and it causes a sense of freedom. We also said last week that you are not silence, a common mistake, a common assumption. Why are you not silence? Because there's a thought. 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 In other words, thought, absence of thought. Thought, absence of thought. Thought, absence of thought. Both are nothing but states of mind. Savikalpa samadhi, state of mind. Very silent, super pleasant. Nevertheless, a state of mind. A subsided, perhaps few binary digits are going through the cognitive capacity. Perhaps the emotional capacity is just taking a little break. Perhaps the memory is not active. And thus we say, my mind is free of thoughts. But what's actually the case? The 4 functions have just subsided their activity. Okay, up to now, we have done what's called na iti na iti. Na in Sanskrit means no, iti is quote. In other words, not this, not this, not this. What is this that I'm referring to? Not this senses, not this mind. When I say mind, what comes to your mind? What comes to your mind? One of the 4 functions, right? Memory, cognition. I'm sure you said the rest. Good. Good students. Okay. So the order is first negate who I am not. Then show me who or what I am. That's called inquiry. Inquiry is not a random process of asking questions about anything. There's an order to it. Now, having negated through na iti, let's ask who or what I am. To answer this, let's ask first the original question that I asked initially in respect to the mind. What is my relationship to the mind? Why am I bringing this question up? Because it's easy to negate the body. But when it comes to the mind, that's where 99% of the confusion happens. So we are having some trouble distinguishing the mind and the I. That's why I'm putting the focus on the mind. So the question is, am I the 4 functions of the mind, which I just explained, or am I other than the 4 functions? The answer is, I am other than the 4 functions of the mind. So far, this is only an intellectual concept. Right now, I have not demonstrated anything. Right now, you're saying, I've heard this before, but we need to show this. So I want to ask a question to you. Shake your head if you understand that one of those 4 functions are constantly changing. If you understand that they are changing, in fact. Okay, is your memory changing from one moment to the other? Okay, you understand, that's easy. Is your intellect changing? Are you thinking one thought and the next? Yeah, see, to put these words together, your cognition is constantly having to put a structure and context to what's being said. Is your emotional capacity constantly undergoing fluctuations? Yeah, maybe one moment's like, okay, get on with the program. Next moment, okay, can you talk slower and so on? Whatever it is. Is your ahamkara, are you constantly saying, wow, I am intrigued. Wow, I am bored. Wow, I am fascinated. Wow, I. Are you constantly doing that as an individual? Yes. In other words, all four functions are certainly undergoing change. Do we agree with that? Do we understand how that's the case? Okay. Now, to say that, you need to now ask, well, if I've just mentioned everything about you as a person, which is changing, then what is it about me that's able to recognize the fact that all those four are changing? Do you see the logic? So you just said that all four are changing. Now, how can that which is changing recognize itself when it's in a constant flux? In other words, it implies there has to be something other than the four changing functions of the mind in order to identify the fluctuations of those four functions. In other words, the experiences are constantly undergoing changes in me, in you, as the mind, as the body, as the senses. But there is a presence in whose presence the memory, the cognition, the ahamkara are constantly known to undergo changes. That is why you're constantly certain that indeed you're going through a series of changes in your life. Where do those changes take place? In one of the four functions of the mind. What is that which knows about the four functions of the mind? The presence, in whose presence all of those four functions of the mind are perfectly known to be undergoing constant modifications, constant changes. In other words, it is not the memory that is the knower of the four functions of the mind. It is not the cognitive capacity that is the knower of the four functions of the mind. It is certainly not the ahamkara that is the knower of the four functions of the mind, because they're just functions, they're inert functions of themselves. In other words, the only other variable left is the presence, in whose presence all of those four functions, the one presence in whose presence all of those four functions are known not only for this person, but for every single person right now. That one presence is what we call the I am. In other words, this presence has to thus survive the changes which are going from X to Y to A to B to C in order to report the fact that there were changes from A to B to C to D. In other words, there's a surviving principle which, because it survives, it's able to verify or validate the changes of the four functions of the mind. And that which survives all of those modifications of the body, mind, and senses is what we call the I presence, the presence that I am, the presence that is never away. Now, the question is, how do I see? Let me give you some concrete exercise to grasp this a little bit more. How do I see myself, the I presence, distinct from the body, mind, senses? So let's do a little exercise. Deep breath. It's always a deep breath before any exercise, right? Okay, it's not complicated. Think of elephant. Elephant. Gray. Tusk, trunk. Okay, now take a break, please. Go have a coffee. Go outside. Come back. Now think of a horse. Okay, horse. Okay, now think of a tree. Okay, everything's fine now. Now, is the elephant still stuck to you? Is it like, like hanging in front of you? Is it like in your mind overtaking your life now? No. In other words, you're free of the elephant. In other words, in and through all three thoughts that I just mentioned, that you just experienced in your body, mind, in your mind complex, you were there in all three conditions, observing the changes from one gap, the next one, gap, the next one. In other words, none of those thoughts stuck to you. And it's the same with emotions. If you were sad and you said, I am sadness, then from that moment on, you will never again be able to experience joy. It will just be one big life of sadness. Every experience will be interpreted as sad. In other words, nothing sticks to this presence that I am, which is why it's able to constantly undergo emotions like I am sad, then I am happy, then I am alert, then I am disappointed, then I am empathetic, then I am perturbed, I am grateful. Now, how do you know about all of these experiences? How are you able to identify them distinctly? Because by the time I go from sad to happy to perturbed to grateful, you are free of all of them. Thus, you are fully there as this presence that is what we call the I am. So what we need to say is, how many contradictory thoughts have you had in your life? Think about it, about yourself. One moment I'm smart, then I'm not so smart, then well, maybe I am smart, and then I'm really smart, and then I'm not smart at all. In other words, all day long we have contradictory thoughts about I. But what are those contradictory thoughts happening? In one of the four functions of the mind. In other words, you, that is the presence, remain perfectly intact, illumining all of the contradictions that are happening all day long in one of the four functions of the mind. That you is this I am presence. Same thing with the three states. We'll just take the waking and the dream state. How long are you awake for? Maybe 16 hours, right? We'll take 16 hours on average. So now, if those 16-hour thoughts were you, then by the time you go to sleep, in deep sleep, they would still be there. But they're not. You're completely free of them. In other words, I cannot be the waking 16-hour thoughts because by the time I go to sleep, they're gone. Same thing with a dream. When we go to dream, the mind creates a lovely, juicy dream world. And then when we wake up, you're immediately free of that world, which in the dream seemed absolutely real. In other words, nothing got stuck to you. The presence that was there during the dream and the same presence that is there during the waking state. Again, let's summarize what we said. This inquiry is about what? Let's ask this question. What is this inquiry about that we're doing right now? Can someone tell me, share some ideas? So far, what is this inquiry about?
Who am I?
Yeah. Okay. And on that?
Do I exist?
Okay.
Is this existence permanent?
We haven't used these words yet. It's just some simple English.
What is my relationship with my mind? That's
good. Yeah. Okay.
inquiry.
Yeah, good. What is my relationship?
How do I relate to myself and actually who I am? What is there which is constant in me?
Okay. Good. Raman.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I haven't seen you before, Raman. Hello.
Yeah, it's my first time. Hello.
Hi. Okay. Okay, Mauktik, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. Self-awareness.
I haven't used the word awareness yet. I don't know what it means yet. So can you maybe expand on that differently?
Because our awareness is always constant. Like the
I don't know what the word awareness means. Can you just maybe change that word around? Until I use the word, I don't know what it means.
Okay. So about myself.
Okay, so it's knowing
Yeah,
myself.
the I quantity which is always present.
Okay, okay. So
Which
in
is
other words,
always
who is that person that's present?
yes.
Or what is what is that which is always present? Okay,
Yes. Yes.
good. Anything else? Sticking to
What
the
is consciousness?
I haven't used the word consciousness. Just words that I've
So,
used so far.
So far, we are discussing about what we are not.
Yeah, good. Okay. See, I like when you stick with this is good because this is how the teaching takes place. Right? I know we want to, use our knowledge base and just drop these vocabulary words. I promise this is not how Vedanta works. You need to stick because a teacher selects words precisely and reveals those words exactly when they're needed. Okay. Anyone else before I go?
what's the purpose of knowing all this?
What's this?
Or what's the purpose of knowing all this?
Okay, yeah, okay, I'll get to that. Okay, good. So the inquiry is about being perfectly clear between transient thoughts or transient experiences and the permanent presence. That's what the Upanishads are for. Perfectly clear. What is this which always changes in different variations and the permanent presence that is always present? What happens is without this inquiry, we mix the two. For example, to demonstrate, right now, you know that I exist. You know that you exist, right? Right now. Now, do you need tomorrow to validate you? Do you need tomorrow to validate your existence right now? No. So in other words, you're completely independent of tomorrow. But from the standpoint of tomorrow, I will be as convinced that's who I am as much as I am convinced right now from the standpoint of today. But from the standpoint of today, I know that I don't need tomorrow to validate me. In fact, whatever I am tomorrow does not validate me today. But when tomorrow comes, that's who I am. A bunch of thoughts, a bunch of emotions, and so on. So this is what happens if we don't apply the inquiry, how we can fall for the constant sense of mixing by not knowing the two realities between transient experiences and the permanent presence. Therefore, question, for whom is this inquiry for that we're doing right now? For whom is this inquiry for?
Well,
Huh?
who I am, like Upanishads say, Aham Brahmasmi, Brahm hai. It's difficult to experience Aham Brahm. We live in this state and it's a kind of matter, energy, particles, I, Ahankar, everything is me. But then I could never relate to with the bigger source that is what I am and expanded so much. You know, things are not. Hello, am I audible to you, Andre?
Yes.
Go on.
So I just want to be clear about exactly from where I came, what I am, how do I exist. It's just the visible body inside. What is moving me? What is making me talk?
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah, okay, good. So these questions, what is moving and what is making me talk, this is now the next section, which I will cover next time. But I like how you're thinking. See, this is exactly what I said. Remember, go back to those 4 questions. First, psychological pressures, need to address that. Then the nature of I needs to be looked into. Then the nature of the universe. What caused the universe? Now, the question of what makes me move, what makes us engage together, where is this intelligence coming from? This is category number 3. We're in category number 2 right now, the nature of I. There's an order to this. So, for whom exactly is this inquiry for? I'll give someone else.
This is for mind, the intellect.
Excellent, Mina, 10 out of 10. Okay, now why is it for the mind? Can someone explain to me?
This is really interesting, but it's for the mind and the intellect because Brahman is already free of knowledge and ignorance.
I haven't heard the word Brahman before.
Okay, that presence is already free of knowledge and ignorance. Therefore, it has to be for the mind and intellect. It can't be for that presence, which is free of knowledge and ignorance.
Good, Thomas. Okay, so for whom is this inquiry for? It cannot be for the presence. It is not for the presence because the presence is present whether the mind inquires into the presence or not. In other words, it is for the individual mind which missed out on this presence, which is unchanging in its nature. In other words, for this reason, we don't try to disown the mind because the mind is the very tool which helps us to discern the constantly changing experiences from this permanent presence. The next question is, how many okay, so this presence that I'm talking about, the other name for it is awareness. See, now the word comes in. Now, when I say awareness, I'm not talking about this conventional word awareness, like, oh, I'm aware of what I need to do tomorrow, or I'm aware I'm hungry right now. I'm aware there's, that I need to sleep right now. I'm aware that I need to listen. I'm aware that there's a 6:30 coming up. I'm aware that, so on. So the word awareness in an usual language refers to what? It refers to a mind which is focusing on one particular event. In other words, I am alert to the fact that I am hungry. I am alert to the fact that I need to go shopping because the fridge is empty. But what do we usually say? We say, I'm aware that I'm hungry. I'm aware, I believe, or I'm aware that, we need to take a break, or we need to talk and resolve something. But all you're really saying is, my mind is putting its focus on what? On a particular issue which it would like to address. So the awareness that I'm talking about is this permanent presence. So the question is, how many awarenesses are there? Because someone can now dispute, okay, well, how do you prove to me that Jivita's awareness is different from, or the same as Mina's awareness, same as James' awareness? You could easily say they're different. So we have to go through some logic to decide, to discern that. So we'll start out with one statement. There is only one awareness. Now, how do we demonstrate this? Well, take, for example, suppose you say, my awareness is different from your awareness. Suppose you say that. Suppose you create that argument. Now, how do you establish that logically? How do you logically prove to me that your awareness is different from my awareness? Can someone tell me? In order to say that, what would you have to now prove that that's the case? Yes, Dave?
Andre, I was thinking, I know we use the word consciousness and awareness is both similar.
Awareness.
But if the mind, if you can say the mind is conscious, then we can separate from the awareness. Can we do that?
No, Dave.
I think, Andre, if can I say something?
Yes. Hold on. I just want to get back. Okay, hold on. I want to get back to Dave. Dave, can you rephrase that statement?
With the mind, it's got the functions of the ahamkara, the intellect, memory. So the mind is able to be conscious of things around you. So
the mind is alert to the 5 sensory data.
Conscious.
Sensory data.
Mind is alert to the 5 sensory data because the 5 sensory data is being inputted into the mind.
So another way of saying that is we are conscious of the environment, everything around us.
The mind is alert to what is going on in its four functions. That which knows about the four functions working in unison to produce an experience, which I call that's called presence.
Can you say that presence is awareness?
I just said now the other name for this presence is awareness.
Yeah.
Okay, Raman?
Yeah.
And now
That's what that's what I was feeling, that the level of alertness is different in different individuals. So that is related to the level of awareness. So how much alert we are about all our senses, how much control, we have on our senses. And that says how much aware we are.
And that is the function, that is how alert, how much focus is the mind placing on one particular event. If I'm multitasking, talking to you and being on the phone, there will be alertness, but it will be cut in half. Therefore, I'm going to have some neglect about the way I communicate with you, and I'm going to make some spelling mistakes on the phone because there's no full alertness on either. Mauktik?
Based on what Dave sir just said, I had a question, like, can the mind be aware of the internal environment, like the thoughts that we have?
You're breaking up. You're breaking up. Say again.
So based on what Dave sir said, I had a question that can the mind be aware of the internal environment, like the thoughts that we are having?
Yeah, because it's the same thing. We're just talking about the external. The internal is also, because the sense organs is not only detecting what's happening on the outside, that means the sensory data, but also it's just basically because, see, there is actually no outside. It's actually happening in your mind right now because it's called a representation. The outside is picked up and it's represented in the mind. So all that's really happening is that a mind is producing the sensory, the environment within itself. And that which illumines that mind, those four functions, including the I am now experiencing you looking at me, talking to me, that's the ahamkara. What illuminates all of that is this presence. Okay.
Awareness, Andre, awareness is.
So Andre, coming back to your question of,
yeah, I wanted to actually.
If we say that there are multiple awareness instead of one,
that's the argument.
The premise would be, like someone would say, on the basis of differences in the experiences of the individuals, their living standards, their thought process, the way they behave, the way they conduct. So on those bases, someone might say that awareness is multiple.
Excellent, Meena. Okay, so Meena is actually now touched. The question was originally, how do I establish the fact that my awareness is different from yours? Now, suppose you want to argue me. What would you have to say? You would have to then attribute a characteristic onto awareness. For example, my awareness is more alert than yours. Your awareness is duller. His awareness is evil. It's like an evil. But what is evil? What is quote evil? It is just an uneducated mind that hasn't learned the principles of dharma, that's neglectful, that is missing out, that's not looking at the environment. In other words, whatever attribute I give, like red, awareness is red, awareness is blue, awareness is purple. What are all these attributes belonging to? Either the body or the mind. In other words, the only logical way to distinguish one awareness to another is to give it different attributes. Those different attributes belong to where? To either the body or the mind. In fact, I even have to know the English language or whatever language in order to give you a difference in attributes. Is that clear? Again, the question was, how is the only way possible for you to say my awareness is different from the insect's awareness or your awareness? The only way you can say that is by attributing an attribute onto awareness. And you say, well, the insect's dumb, so it's got a dumb awareness. But dumb belongs to where? A limited capacity of cognition, of memory, I don't know if they have emotions. You can ask the insect. In other words, the attribute belongs to the mind itself. Is this clear? Okay. The second way we can demonstrate that one awareness is the same as the other is if we use a metaphor. And I wish I had a cup here. Maybe I can use this. Okay. Did you have a cup? Okay. I'll take maybe this as a cup. It's a lipstick. Okay. Suppose you take a cup. Inside this cup, there's space. So around us, there's space. Inside this cup, there is also space. Is there not? Now, the space inside this cup is saying, I'm only this much. I'm confined by this much. That's what the space inside this cup is saying right now. In other words, it's feeling limited. Hold on, I'm going to take a bigger cup. It's too small. My tea. Luckily, I drank some tea before coming here. Okay. Good. So the space inside this cup is saying I am confined by the edges of this cup. And it's feeling kind of limited. It's going, oh, I wish I was more, and I wish I was not so limited. But then you have another cup, a different color, maybe a different country. And they're thinking exactly the same in accordance to what? To the limitations of their particular shape and size of the cup. But in reality, there is what? Only one undivided space in whom all objects exist, including this cup that is saying I am limited, that cup that is saying I am limited, every cup that is saying I am limited. Then why does it seem like the space in this cup is limited? It seems like that because of the presence of the cup. But in reality, the space inside this cup is not different from the total space of the entire existence. Now, suppose you have 3 cups, 1, 2, 3, and I put water into one cup, I put orange juice into another cup, and I put Coke into another cup. Question: have I displaced space by putting liquid in all 3 cups? If I put now water into this cup, have I taken out space? Okay, we got 1 head shake.
No.
Oh, we have 2 no's.
No.
3 no's.
No.
No.
Okay, now obviously I'm going to ask why. Explain.
You have filled the space.
Huh?
You have filled the space, but you haven't removed the space.
Yeah, I fill the space. Okay, good. Put another way. Someone else in your different words.
The space is all over. It's always there. It's always present. Pervades everything. Also, like between the cells on your body, like all over is space.
Yeah, definitely. It's all over. Okay. Anyone else?
The space is in continuation with the space outside. It's just a bit of it is filled up. That's what thing. But otherwise, the space is in continuity with the space outside. So
Yeah.
it's in continuation.
It's a continuation. Good. It's one undivided. Okay. Anyone else would like to shine?
So the air space has become water space.
Yeah, that's another way to put it. Good. Thomas? No? Okay. In other words, it is only because of the presence of the space in this cup that I can actually accommodate whatever is inside it. If there was no space, where is the question of accommodating juice, Coke, or water? So even if I fill this cup with Andre thoughts, or Jivata thoughts, or Meena thoughts, or James thoughts, or Lindsay thoughts, or Adrian thoughts, or Avnish thoughts, Arun thoughts, Thomas thoughts, Lloyd thoughts, Gokhman thoughts, etc. thoughts, it has not displaced the one same space, which is the truth, and which is that which accommodates every single cup, filled with just different liquids called personality of Andre, personality of Dave, personality of Rani, personality of Jivata, personality of 7.5 billionth Jiva. Not only in this universe, but you can now extend this to every single creature in the entire existence. Now, Rani says something. So what if I know all of this? So what if I have this knowledge of who I am? How does this make any difference to me? The presence that we're speaking of is not an ordinary presence. It's not just something, oh, I'm present. Just be, present, be in the now. This is not what we're talking about. This presence is called Brahman. What does Brahman mean? Limitless presence, which is common to all. And this presence that we're talking about is this presence in whose presence all conditions are known. To whom? To this particular body, mind, intellect. To that particular body, mind, intellect. To every body, mind, intellect. Now the next question, yes, Mautik?
Can we put it in this way as well? Like, for example, we have a gold biscuit and a gold bracelet. And if we are trying to compare these two, the only element which is present is gold. So we can say similarly, the consciousness is constant. Only attributes are changing.
Okay, now I'm glad you brought that up, because in Vedanta, when we use examples of gold and ornament, clay and pot, etc., we have extremely specific contexts when to apply that. So even though I know what you're talking about, I cannot put it into this context because it just doesn't have a place right now. That will have a place in category number 3, what is the nature of the universe, when we talk about Ishvara. Now, the next question, having now answered category number 2, that means the 4 paradigms that I have to reassess in order to answer Arjuna's question, which was, how do I gain the final fulfillment? Question number 1, by reassessing my psychology. Are things holding me back? I need to honestly look at that. Number 2, once I'm decently free from my psychological holdbacks, then I can listen to this knowledge, which I'm now expounding in this session. Once that is complete, then I can now ask, what is the nature of the universe? How did all of these objects that I witness come about? What came before the universe was even here? I need to know this. If I don't, then this question will still be in my mind, and it's not going to give me peace, because I need what? Final fulfillment. If there's one question unanswered, where's the question of final fulfillment? It's going to be one more agitation or something like that. So next session, we will investigate what is the nature of the universe. Lastly, I want to close by, yes, Kritika.
Sorry, I just have this very basic question.
Sure.
Now that we're comparing the cup and the mug to ourselves and comparing the permanent presence to space, now I'm not really able to understand how we are able to equate the permanent presence with space. I mean, what's the reason that we are saying that they are sort of comparable?
Okay, yeah, so this is a good question, which again, I will need to answer the nature of the universe, because space itself is an element. It is also physical. It is, even though it is physical, it is material in nature, it is the most subtlest in nature. It is the closest example that we have to give you some understanding how the space, what does space do, Kritika? It accommodates. Whatever is in space is accommodated only because of space. If the space was not there, there's no question of saying anything. There's no question of even filling the cup. Now, does space have any attributes? No. No. That in other words, the only reason why I can have one color inside of fluid, blue, and another color of fluid, red, is because space itself doesn't have any attributes of its own. That's why it's always able to give me whatever I present exactly as I've presented it. If I present you bluish tint, it's going to be exactly bluish tint, because space is not overlaying it with its own attributes. In the same way, the one presence right now is now even the presence of those very thoughts which constructed that question and asked me, which is why you've able to ask me that question. You're not confusing that question with some other question. In other words, your mind underwent this listening in the last 1.5 hours or so, and by the cognition of what happened in your mind, Kritika, it constructed a question. Now, the presence that we're speaking of is that presence in whose presence Kritika's mind is illumined. And who's that knower? The presence. Now, when that mind constructs the question, what does Kritika go? Oh, I want to ask a question. What is the knower, the knowing principle, because of which this constructed question was even known in the first place? That knowing principle is this presence that we're speaking of. So going back to your question, how do we compare space to Brahman? It is true, there is actually no comparison. However, due to there is a limitation of words, we need to give you some example through words that you can now look at the implied meaning. So this is the important part of Vedanta. Often we use direct interpretation. So now we go, okay, so Brahman equals space. No, you need to look at behind the words, what I just said. I'm only giving you a metaphor that Brahman, this presence, is as though attributeless space in whose presence all objects are known to be what they are, exactly as they are. So now you need to look at that. What does this mean in relation to my own experience?
Basically, I just want to sort of understand, like I do understand that this is a metaphor, but going to the question that how we are able to say that the permanent presence doesn't have any attributes, sort of it's comparable to space. So how are we able to draw that conclusion? I'm not able to understand that portion of it.
Yeah, Kritika, so, how is it that our awareness doesn't have any attributes? We just explain now, because whatever you want to give to, whatever name or definition you want to give to awareness, you have to give it a thinking. You have to say, okay, well, here's what I think what awareness is. But the only way that you can think that is because your awareness is free in the first place. It's not stuck by some previous thought. Therefore, you're not carrying that thought over and saying, see, the thought wouldn't even come up unless you were free of your thoughts. Think about that. The emotion of whatever it is, confusion or, cheer, maybe now I've understood a little bit, it wouldn't even come up unless you were other than what has come up. Now go back to that previous example, Kritika. You're experiencing one experience, and then elephant, gone. Tree, think of a tree, gone. Now, Kritika, is an elephant now stuck to you forever? Let me ask you.
No.
Okay, now explain to me, how is that the case? Why is the elephant not stuck to you? Why are you available to have new thoughts? Why are you fresh? Every single moment you're fresh to have new emotions, new thoughts. Doesn't that imply that there is a presence which is free from whatever thoughts and emotions are coming forth constantly?
That's the part that I'm finding it very hard to sort of assimilate, that this is, how is it different? How is it, why are we not simply taking it as that we are changing? We are having thoughts, like there's a tree, it goes, in autumn, the leaves will fall off and it will still be the tree. It will have green leaves in spring and leaves will fall off in the autumn. So that's just the cycle. So why are we not thinking of it as a cycle, and like in our case, just our life cycle, and we are changing?
Yeah, okay, so this is good. So in order to answer that question, see, now you're bringing category number 3, the nature of the universe. So to explain the object, the cycle, the intelligence which produces summer, winter, autumn, spring, the intelligence which holds the planets around the orbit, the intelligence which makes the birds fly towards north when it's winter, the intelligence which makes down day and night and makes us wake up when day comes. All of this intelligence I have to now further explain in order to assimilate this bigger vision. So I understand where you're coming from, but I also want to say that you need to just wait just a little bit for category number 3. And then I need to integrate a few more components to get a bigger vision, because we're still, in a sense, not having the full picture yet. And I also understand that your question may be arising from the fact that, what about space? Why are you now equating space to awareness? But there is more to this than what I've explained. And this moreness I have to mention. It's called Ishvara.
Right. So it's okay not to be able to understand this.
Yeah, when I was doing this with Nima, my teacher, and I had to take a lot of confidence from her, because she does this a lot. And she says very clearly, when this part comes, then that's where most kind of just pull back, there's some trouble understanding. But everyone loves to discuss, life issues, things in life, like things that we can all talk about at a dinner table. But the moment you bring in category number 2, the nature of I, that's when like, whoa, I don't understand this. And it's really interesting, she says, no matter how, it doesn't matter how smart the person is, it really gets most in that particular section. I don't get it. How is it true? So this is why it takes some time to assimilate. And I also need you, everyone, Kritika, to take some time to maybe watch the video again and just pause, and think about it. See, what does it mean for me? How may this be true for me?
All right.
Yeah, because I cannot do everything in 1.5 hours. I need you to also use your mind to think about this.
Yep, thanks.
Okay.
Hey, Andre.
Yes.
Can we look at it in this way, that awareness is permanent, right? So anytime something takes on an attribute, that's filtered through the mind as such, and therefore it's no longer I, because it's taken on some form of attribute. So it's it's a point that awareness is awareness and consciousness is consciousness because it doesn't have any attributes attached to it. As soon as it does, it loses that, and it's no longer the self, because you can objectify it. Does that sort of have any relevance?
Yeah, when Dave said the word consciousness, now in Vedanta, we have 2 words that we use for this presence. The first one is awareness. The second one is chit, consciousness. And they are interchangeably used. So in the class, I would like us to stick with the word that I'm using, either presence or awareness so far, because I haven't used the word consciousness. But it's true. What Dave is saying is actually a good point, because see, the moment there is a change, that is already, it cannot be I, because I have to be other than the change to say there is a change in my experience. For example, this whole session went by and you started out so-and-so, and now you're still here, and so many things have taken place, but you know that things have taken place. Now, it cannot be the ahamkara, because the ahamkara doesn't have awareness of its own. It cannot be the cognitive capacity, because it doesn't have awareness of its own. It cannot be the memory, because it doesn't have awareness of its own. The only other is this presence which we're speaking of, and this presence is called Brahman. All of us have something in common here. We are just present to what's going on. Simple as that. You're just present to what's going on right now. You're present to your life. You're present to the fact that I am so-and-so. You're present to everything around you. Because of this presence, you know there is a life called Luciana, called Avnish, called Raman, called Arun, etc. So I would like, I guess, Mautik.
I had a question, like in the first step, that's 1980, we have realized that, okay, we have certain things which are barring us reaching our potential. but still we are not able to go beyond those things which are barring us. Why is that happening with us?
You're not able to go beyond the limitations.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this cup is going to be limited, whether it likes it or not, until last breath. To get a body, to get a mind, there's limitation. Live with it. Simple as that. It doesn't mean that I am limited, because this is about changing the nature of the identity of I. Where's my I before the inquiry takes place? In the cup itself, in the content that is the mind. But by going through the inquiry, what do I recognize? That which makes this content of the mind known to be going through its situations, conditions, is not the mind, but what is it? It is the presence itself. And that presence I am. That's called Brahman presence. Now, next session, see, now you're going, okay, well, what about the mind? Because it sounds like this presence is different than the mind. In other words, not only is this presence, that presence which illumines or makes the mind's condition known, but the mind itself is made out of this presence. That's why there's only one reality. Now, to explain this, we need to go through the next session. So I would like to close by presenting us the order of this inquiry so far for revision. How do we start this inquiry? Firstly, Arjuna said, what do I do to gain that final fulfillment? Show me. Krishna then went into category number 2, the nature of I. He made a bold claim. He said, the reality of you is the same reality of everything else. Then we created a metaphor to open up a possibility how that may be true. We used the wave and the water analogy. In order to bring that down to earth on a human relatable level, we introduced, or we divided, the one reality into 2 categories, subject and object. Then we investigated the object in respect to the body, mind, and intellect. And we applied neti, not this, not this. Then once we know what I am not, we looked into the subject. And what is the subject? The presence in whose presence everything is known. So why am I saying this? Because if you were to ask, how do I self-inquire? This should give you a model. The model of self-inquiry is one which has an order. I go through what I am not, and I make sure I understand exactly what it's teaching me. Then I am now available to inquire into this presence. For example, in Kritika's case, she can take some time to specifically focus on the nature of I, that is the subject, who I am right now, right here. So in other words, this presence is not someplace over there. It is the very presence in whose presence you, the individual, know yourself to be present right now. Okay, so we know what's happening next week. The next week, nature of the universe. How did this all come about? Okay, any observations? Any last observations? Anything you'd like to say before?
Yeah, Meena asked you a question, Andre.
I was asking how to inculcate the self-inquiry process in our daily routine. Should we do it like every day, or should we wait for a life situation to happen, just like Arjuna had it at the time of war? What's your take on that? What are the tips to do the self-inquiry process?
Sure. Okay, good question. Do you have a hobby that you enjoy? That you just want to do every day? It's like that. Turning self-inquiry into a natural part of life. Looking life through curious eyes, like a child. Just asking questions about why is this the way it is? I wonder. Being a little child, curiosity. That's it. Just having that mind of activity, mind of, I want to know. And that just becomes a habit. And that habit turns into more sophisticated kind of questions. So there's no pressure. There's no particular role to inquiring. It's just being a little child in a sense. but educated child. You know the right
an-
questions. Nice.
But
Yeah.
Andre, knowingly or unknowingly, as a child, we do inquiry anyway, even during our childhood. And as we grow up, we inquire in little spurts of moments and situations.
Yeah.
I've been doing that in my personal experience throughout. Actually, I can remember being 8 years old, 9 years old, inquiring
Yeah.
certain things in my life about what is life.
Certainly.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
I
sure.
think
Yeah.
it is, Andre, I think it's an ongoing process. It's an
True.
ongoing process, endless.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process, and you know, it's like what Rani said. I too remember Rani. I was just so inquisitive, so asking questions about everything, and I think we stopped that at time of adulthood. We sort of just find ourselves caught up and then go into this mechanical process. So you know, we need to kind of look things back how we were, and that's what got us so, you know, growing and excited as little children. So let's bring that in a little bit.
The real question is, where does that inquiry leads us to? You know, does
Yeah.
it make us more confused,
No, because it doesn't
or
lead,
does it give clarity?
it doesn't lead you more confused, because the whole process of Vedanta is to isolate you to a particular series of questions. So your inquiry doesn't now go into, you know, all over the place how to get stuff. But in this manner, we're isolating our inquiry into what's the nature of I and the functions of my mind right now, which are being used to communicate with you. And I have to know that very well. That's what called being, I know myself very well. As who? As the person. And you say, what's the point of knowing myself? So that I can discern changing thoughts from the permanent presence. So there is this benefit to knowing oneself as a relative person. It's not about discarding, because discarding actually, ironically, makes me more confused. So where does this lead to? It just leads to just a greater clarity. And clarity just means I'm not confused right now. No matter what's going on, I'm just not confused. Even if something is confusing happening, you're still not confused because you see through that. Now, why do you see through things as though looking through a transparent glass? Because you've done the work in the past. So it is work. And when I say work, I'm not saying, of course, now, you know, oh, okay, so let me, hold on, pause, family. Let me go into my room and now inquire for 1 hour. It's not like that. I don't do that. You know, just like life, it's like going to the shopping mall is an inquiry. You're looking at, wow, look at this intelligence, you know, how we're all moving in space and how every mind is moving according to its unconscious. Some minds are walking fast, unconscious. Okay, so we're bringing this knowledge into our daily experience, into our daily routine. Yeah. And it makes you smarter, by the way, just makes more active. I mean, no, the mind's supposed to be used, right? It's supposed to be actively participated with. You're supposed to use it for discovering more about yourself and more about your environment. Okay, any other tips on self-inquiring? How would you self-inquire?
Well, Andre, my grandmother used to say, Shivoham, Aham, like I am God. She would always say, Shivoham, I am God. And she would say, you are also God. I am also God. And God is in all of us. And it's an extended thing. We
Yes.
don't have to search it out somewhere.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. And that's actually a good starting point for the inquiry. So if you ever get confused, where do I inquire? Just remind yourself, all that is here is just one intelligence expressing in different laws, in different orders, in different movements, in different memories, all coming from this one intelligence. And this very person that's inquiring is not separate from that one intelligence. Therefore, that intelligence is right here, right now, moving every cell from top to bottom, moving all of the electrical brain impulses right now that cause this person to talk to you. I'm not doing any of it. It's all happening. It's done on the behalf of myself. It's done for me. You don't move your brain cells, nor your white blood cells, nothing. It's all done for you. What is doing this? This one intelligence. And it's a huge understanding to know this, because the relationship to life changes. It becomes a lot more smoother, a lot softer, gentler, and more sensitive to the environment. because I'm recognizing the one intelligence in all beings. So it's a big deal, actually. It's not just some talk. And that's why there is a life transformation, because you have a different relationship with your environment, with the people, with your family, with everything. And what does this do? Creates peace, harmony.